Tim, let's start with this. It's opening day eve at minus the Dodgers and the Padres, right? Already happened. But let's stick to Baltimore here specifically. And you know the ties, you know the connection here. It was a very historic day in Baltimore sports. David Rubenstein now is taking over as the owner of the Baltimore Orioles. And just maybe you can just touch on kind of the impact this is going to have now and moving forward for the team.
Well, first off, no matter what happens in Baltimore, opening day is a national holiday in the city, as it should be. People take their children out of school for opening day. No one should have to go to school on opening day, if you ask me. And now it's so much better in Baltimore because new ownership has changed. And in comes a guy who not only has a lot of money, he seems to love the game, and he loves the Orioles. This is a perfect combination. This is what every owner should be like. And we've gotten away from this a little bit, fellas. We've got corporate ownership now where you never even see the owner. When the owner shows up, he's in public and he tells you how much he loves the game and the team. Everything's going in the right direction now for the Orioles, in part because of ownership. And I hope he's got a lot of money, because there are some great players on this team that need to be signed long-term eventually.
Yeah, and Tim, you just touched on it right there with the players who do need to be signed long-term. Will Smith, he gets an extension today with LA. A lot of people had their eyes out on that and that extension. What do you think David Rubenstein's philosophy will be on keeping these cornerstone players, the Adleys, the Gunners, Jackson Holliday, when it's his time, when he comes up to the show here in Baltimore for the long haul?
Well, I think he's smart enough to recognize that when you look at the Braves, who've been really good for at least 5 years and are going to be even better for the next 10, the best way to do it is to lock up your players long-term. What that does is it sends the best possible message to your fan base. When we draft a player, we're going to keep that player. And maybe you save money in other spots, but you guys know that you win with homegrown stars. It's the best way to build a team. It's the best way to build a dynasty. So if I'm David Rubenstein, I'm thinking, how can I get the catcher signed long-term, the shortstop signed long-term, and Jackson Holliday signed long-term? It's going to cost like Shohei money. We all get that. But that's how you have to do it if you're going to win.
It's definitely, and that's kind of the recipe. Not that you can't win without spending. It's true. Look at the Rays. The Rays find a way to continue to win, and the Rays throw out a lineup, it feels like, Tim, and all of a sudden you go, yeah, they're not going to have as much of a chance this year, and there they are at the end of the season. It feels like they're right in the race. Now, for the Baltimore Orioles, some of the switch on this, just to talk about contracts for a second, some of these young Orioles are represented by Scott Boras. And right now, specifically with what's just happened, Jordan Montgomery did not get the deal that everyone thought he would get. Either did Blake Snell, and the list goes on. Do you think that trend's going to have to change here, or is this kind of an anomaly given the situation?
Well, Scott Boras is the greatest agent of all time, and the reason people don't like him is he usually wins. But in this offseason, he didn't win quite as often as he usually does. But when you deal with a Boras client, you have to recognize he is going to want that guy to go to free agency, because that's where most of the money is. This is where the young Orioles can really help, and David Rubenstein can help to have a Steven Strasburg type situation. Not a perfect example, but he went to Scott Boras and said, I don't want to go anywhere. I want to stay here. I don't want to get to free agency. I want to sign now. Now, he probably took less than he could have gotten, but he stayed with the Nationals, ended up winning a World Series there. And that's what the Orioles have to try to do, is convince Scott Boras and everyone else that the best way to build this team is not let these guys get even close to free agency, get them locked up long before that.
Tim, there's so much excitement, especially after what the Orioles were able to accomplish last year, winning the AL East for the first time in years. Then they win 101 games, lock up that 1 seed in the American League. For this team, coming off such a spectacular season, one where they're continuing to build momentum, I know it's a loaded question, but how far do you see this team going in 2024 with the pieces they do have right now?
Well, they're good enough to win the World Series now. That's how good they are. Number one, they have these incredibly young, dynamic, hungry players that we've already talked about. But the big acquisition, obviously, they went and got an ace in Corbin Burns. Fellas, you guys have seen him. Ryan, these are the days that you're going to say, I'm glad I don't play anymore. When you watch a cutter at 97 miles an hour from this guy, he is fearless. He's a great teammate, and I hope he stays with the Orioles long-term for their sake. But if he's pitching for a contract, that's exactly what you want. You needed him at the top of the rotation. I saw the other day, fellas, on one of these prediction things that the Orioles are going to win 83 games. Is that a joke? Are you kidding me? This team is so talented. It is moving in the right direction at such a high rate of speed. I think they're the best team in a very difficult American League East, and they may not win 101 games again, but they're going to be a better team this year than they were last year, especially when they get to October.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I think people underestimate, or maybe they don't appreciate how hard it is to win 100 games. So what the Orioles are doing, who knows that they're going to win 100 plus this year, right? The goal is to win the American League East. The goal is to get back to the playoffs and go further on. And you're right, Tim. Burns' cutter, Burnsy, if you can throw a cutter like he does, it's terrifying. I can attest to it. I hated a pitcher that threw a really good cutter because then you feel like it might just go right start the middle of the plate, and that thing's running in and almost hitting you is what it feels like. And that's why a guy like Mariano Rivera all those years ago as the closer could manipulate the ball, throwing just fastballs and be that successful. Tim, I think you brought up then you think the Orioles are obviously going to have a good year. We do believe as well. They have so much depth. Let's just talk about the rest of the American League then, or at least in the American League East. If there was a team to challenge, and now there's questions with the Yankees, with who that's going to be or what's going on because the Garrett Cole situation. Do you still think that a team like the Yankees is the best challenger to Baltimore, or is it one of the other teams that we might not be talking about enough?
Well, this division is so stout, 4 teams could win the division. But I think the Orioles are the best team, and I was certain the Yankees were the second best team until Garrett Cole went down. Fellas, you know this. He's the best pitcher in the game. They couldn't have won 82 games without him last year, and I don't think they have a truly, truly reliable guy behind him right now in the rotation. Now, there are all sorts of possibilities, guys who might step forward, but I'm worried for their sake about their starting pitching, but I still think they're a playoff team because they're going to score 200 more runs than they did last year. Wait till you see what Juan Soto does to that lineup all by himself with his pitch selection, his ability to hit the ball the other way, his ability to take a walk. And with him and Aaron Judge, if Aaron Judge plays 150 games and Soto does what he does and Verdugo and other guys fill in, that team's going to really be good offensively, but they're going to have to be to slug through their pitching issues until Cole gets back, which may be June 1, let's say, but it can't be much later than that. Otherwise, they're going to have a really hard time making the playoffs.
Tim, we've talked so much about who is on the team and the potential of the current roster with the Orioles, but a big surprise to many across Birdland, but who didn't make the opening day roster, and that's Jackson Holliday. Were you surprised at all when you didn't see his name on that opening day roster? Did you understand Mike Elias's thought process with keeping him down in AAA for the time being?
Look, I understand these things. He struck out every 3 at-bats. He needs more help against left-handed pitching. He really needs to refine his game at second base. Having said all that, he should be the opening day second baseman for this team. They told him, if you play well this spring, you'll make the team. He played beyond well. And you guys know this, especially you, Ryan. You watch him. Every motion he makes on a baseball field is fluid and athletic. He is a dream to watch. And with that gene pool from his father, younger brother, and everything else, I would have started him at second base every day and said, we're going to take a chance because this is a contending team. You can keep a 20-year-old in the minor leagues to get him some extra work so he's ready. But I think he's ready now, and I think they need as much help as they can get to be as good as they can be this year.
You know what? I think a lot of Birdland is either going to be fired up, angry, mad, wants to run through a brick wall, or all the above after your explanation there, Tim. But that is the question. There's no denying the talent that Jackson Holliday possesses, and no one can have a potential higher ceiling on the team than maybe one other player. And Rocco knows how I feel about him. That's Gunnar Henderson. I really think Gunnar Henderson can be the dark horse to win the MVP this year behind guys like Soto and Judge. But the time's going to have to – we're going to have to wait a little bit longer on the time. And for the Orioles, it feels like Jackson Holliday's time is not a if, it's a when. Tim, I guess moving around a little bit, is there anything that, as far as when I try to tell people this was something that happened in spring training and we've had conversations and you've been around so long to understand how each player needs to get ready a certain way. People were worried about Corbin Burns. People were worried about how certain Orioles were hitting in spring training. This isn't just the Orioles, I'm saying. This is all baseball players. They go, wait a minute, why aren't they hitting 300? And so many of these young prospects were excelling. Now, the prospects were doing all that they needed to do to try to make an impression. But, Tim, as you know, and I wanted you to say it to our audience, spring training means something differently for each player, and especially for veterans, they have a different kind of objective when it comes to getting ready.
Right. And I never pay attention to spring training stats for veteran players who are completely proven. They are not there to hit 300 with 7 homers. They're there to get their body in shape. When the games actually count, everything matters. I'll never forget when Ichiro came up. This is 2001. Lou Piniella, the really impatient manager of the Mariners at the time, he whispered to me, all this guy does is hit soft singles to left field. So he went to Ichiro and said, can you do anything other than hit a soft single to left field? And Ichiro said, yeah, I can hit it really hard over there if you want me to. And Lou said, well, go hit it really hard over there. And Ichiro, of course, goes on to win the Rookie of the Year and the MVP. I don't worry at all about veteran player stats as long as they're healthy. If Corbin Burns has a 10 ERA, I don't care. I promise you, on opening day, when he starts firing, everything changes when the games matter.
Thank you, Tim. I appreciate that.
There you go. That's all he wanted. He just wanted someone to agree with him, and you're the guy, Tim. So we appreciate you for that. As far as this is kind of non-baseball related, Tim, but you're from the Maryland area. That segment with Scott Van Pelt with the Baltimore names, I've watched it over and over and over again, and I'm sure when you come back here, you get asked about it all the time. And to that, I want to ask you this. It doesn't have to be a sports name. What is the most Baltimore name that you have ever heard in your lifetime with that accent? Because I just think the people here, they appreciate that so much, that segment especially. And people here, they do sound like that and talk like that. So it's understandable why you guys had so much fun with that. It's great.
Yeah, well, look, the lesson is we're covering sports for a living. You're allowed to have a good chuckle once in a while. And, there are people in your life who will make you laugh no matter what they say. Scott Van Pelt is one of those. He is the master of all accents, dialects, impersonations. He's hilarious. This is how bad it got at one point. I'm walking through the grocery store. I'm in the frozen food aisle. A total stranger comes up to me. He doesn't even say hello. He just says, can you please ask Scott to give the name for the women's soccer goalie for the World Cup women's team? That is Hope Solo. So I actually am taking requests now that I pass along to Scott Van Pelt. Fellas, I've covered baseball for 44 years. I've done some pretty good things. I swear to you, more people react to Scott Van Pelt and me than anything else that I do. I'm not sure that's good or not, but I'm here for a good laugh once in a while because, as we know, Ryan, this is the hardest game in the world to play. And if you don't have a good laugh with it once in a while, it will tear you to pieces no matter who you are.
Yeah, you got to enjoy it, and that's great. Honestly, we love it. I think the people love it. That's why. Even if you're like, why the hell do you love this? But they do, because it makes them feel that they can relate to the people, and that's why with when it's you and Scott together, you guys are so relatable to the audience. That's what makes you guys special. You mentioned something. I'll get you out of here on this last question or thought. You said you've seen a lot in the baseball world, or experienced a ton, but now you have a different experience. You are experiencing something through a different lens. You and your son are starting a podcast, and the first episode drops tomorrow. And that, to me, I maybe just spent time with my father. That has to be one of the cooler moments now in your career.
Oh, it is the coolest moment in my career. Look, my dad and I were as close as a son and father could be. And now I've got a chance to work with my son, who's 30 years old. He is a music talk show host in Philadelphia, country music talk. I used to call it country music. He had country western. He said, Dad, it's country music now. It's not country western anymore. Not the point. He's always wanted to work. We've always wanted to work together. And now we have a chance to do it. So the first episode is tomorrow. It is a joyful, playful celebration of baseball. It is a Valentine to all baseball fans. We're going to have chuckles all the way through it, but we're going to talk about some stuff that hopefully is entertaining, educational, and I can't wait for this thing to drop tomorrow because I'm doing this with my son. If we make any money on this, that would be great. I don't care about that. I've always wanted to work with my son, and this is my opportunity.
That's amazing. And we're going to continue to push that out there. I can't wait to listen and watch. Again, I think it's just something that's so special. And again, you guys just have so much knowledge about the sport. So I cannot wait to see. But Tim, I appreciate you being so patient with us tonight. Appreciate that I am causing all the issues. It's not Rocco this time. It's me, Tim. But we'd love to have you on more, talk more about how the pod's going and the baseball season, because we can all agree this baseball season, there's nothing like it. So, Tim, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks,
my
Tim.
pleasure. Call anytime, fellas. Enjoy
You're the
it.
man. My dad calls it country western as well, so you're not alone. Appreciate you, Tim.
Be careful what you wish for, Tim. Have a great night.
Okay, take care.